I hope you see what's happening. A universe that was extremely simple when it first appeared is slowly filling up with more and more complex and interesting things. And that process is what eventually allowed us to exist. About 4 billion years ago, life appeared on Earth. We now understand a lot more about how life emerged, more than we did 13 years ago, but we still don't have the full story. Life may also exist elsewhere in the universe, and for what it's worth, my money is on the idea that it does exist in lots of places in the universe. But we may learn within our lifetimes, if there is life near us, from telescopes such as the James Webb Orbiting Telescope. Life is extraordinarily complex. So defining life is not easy. That's partly because living things are built from very complex molecules, such as proteins and DNA. But what is particularly interesting about living organisms is that, unlike rocks or stars, they act with purposes and goals. Now, I love this picture because this is clearly an animal that's going to act with a lot of purpose and with a lot of goals. Their most basic goals, and you and I share these goals, are to survive and reproduce. And those organisms that reproduce pass on to their descendants the genetic recipe for survival and reproduction in a particular environment. Now, that environment could be deep beneath the ocean at volcanic vents, or it could be in trees in the Amazon forest. The first living organisms on Earth were single-celled bacteria. But over time, tiny copying errors in reproduction allowed new variants to evolve, and some of them found new ways of surviving and reproducing. And in this way, living organisms began to spread through the oceans of planet Earth and eventually onto the land, where they turned brown landscapes green. In the last billion years, much more complex organisms evolved. They were built from huge numbers of individual cells that worked together for the good of the larger organism of which they were a part. Multicellular organisms like you and me are colossal. Comparing a bacterium to a human, I think, is a bit like comparing the Burj Khalifa to an ant crawling along its front steps. We humans are made from trillions of cells that collaborate with astonishing efficiency because they share the same DNA. And their collaboration, by the way, has a lot to teach us humans today. Our species evolved just a few 100,000 years ago, which is an eye blink on the timescales of big history. In a sense, we're just one more of billions of species that have inhabited this planet. Yet we're also one of the strangest of all the species that have called Earth home. It's much easier to see how strange we are through the wide-angle lens of big history. This is what makes us so strange. Most species seem content to live in a particular niche. Koalas, for example, chew the leaves of a few types of eucalyptus trees. That's it. That's how they survive and reproduce and make more koalas. What makes us humans exceptional is that in our brief time on Earth, and yes, a few 100,000 years is not long on the scales of big history, we have managed to live in more and more environments. By 10,000 years ago, humans could be found on every continent apart from Antarctica. Then, through agriculture, humans began reshaping the Earth's landscapes in ways that could support more and more humans. Until today, as you know, there are 8 billion humans on planet Earth. 200 years ago, humans discovered the colossal energy locked up in fossil fuels. And in just my lifetime, we have used this bonanza of energy from fossil fuels to transform the surface of planet Earth. We've changed its landscapes, its climate system, its oceans, and we're even cluttering up the space above our atmosphere with human junk. Then, less than 100 years ago, we learned how to create weapons of mass destruction that could ruin much of the biosphere in just a few days. Now, let's be clear, nothing like this has ever happened before in the 4 billion years since life first appeared on Earth. What that means is that we live at a momentous turning point in the history of our planet. We've entered what many call the Anthropocene epoch, in which we humans seem to dominate change on Earth. This is remarkable, but it's also dangerous and very, very worrying. But the big history story can also tell us why we are so powerful. And by doing so, it can point to possible ways of ensuring a better future. So let me now tell you the why are we humans so much more powerful than any other species that has ever existed on Earth? The key, I believe, is human language. All living organisms learn about their environments. But animals with brains can learn much more because brains use limited sensory information to construct models of the world by interpolating, by guessing what might be there. Those models can tell a deer or an antelope that just a few hints of yellow and black stripes are probably a tiger, so look out. Some animals have languages, and that means they can learn much, much more about the world by sharing what they know with other members of their species. And these shared visions of the world are much, much richer than the visions of individuals. To get a sense of how much richer they are, just imagine for a moment how limited your understanding of the world would be if you had never, ever spoken to another human being. You would be aware only of what was immediately in front of you. What makes us humans so different is that our languages are so powerful that the sharing of information about our world has virtually no limits. We can pass on our grandparents' knowledge of hers, or, if we lived 10,000 years ago, how to hunt mammoth. And we can learn new things from strangers and pass them on in stories. New information means we can exploit our surroundings more and more effectively and spread into new environments. Other animals with language, such as chimps or orcas, seem incapable of spreading beyond a limited number of environments. But we humans share ideas and information so prolifically that in the course of human history, we have spread to more and more environments until today we're transforming planet Earth. These shared visions of the world that make us so powerful began as shared visions within particular tiny communities early in human history, and they're unique to our species. I call them core stories. They include much of what today we call religion, science, philosophy, and many other forms of knowledge. Core stories assemble all you need to know to survive in a particular society, all its scientific knowledge, its moral knowledge, and its rituals and traditions. Because they're shared, core stories enable whole communities to work together with common goals and purposes. In addition, each core story can accumulate more knowledge over time, particularly by sharing knowledge with neighboring communities. And that is what has driven our remarkable capacity for sustained technological innovation since our species first appeared a few 100,000 years ago. And this graphic shows some of the critical technological innovations of the Paleolithic era, which we often don't take seriously enough. Over time, the core stories of different communities have slowly enriched each other, and eventually, some of those core stories began to overlap. If there was enough overlapping, different core stories might eventually merge to form a new core story for a much larger community, such as the core stories of the Muslim world or China. But the merging of core stories was often extraordinarily painful. Many people resisted changes to their core stories for understandable reasons, creating conflicts that could be extremely violent. We see plenty of evidence of these conflicts today. And the blood bias of most of today's media focuses mainly on those conflicts, creating an excessively pessimistic and depressing account of the world. The impact of that view of the world is apparent from the following chart, which shows, amongst other things, that at the time the survey was taken, 74% of young Indians thought humanity was doomed. But look beneath the surface. Try to put aside the blood bias, and something much more promising is happening. New technologies such as planes, the internet, and smartphones are linking people all around the world, so that core stories are now overlapping on a global scale. And those processes are slowly creating an embryonic core story for all of humanity. Modern scientific ideas have now become part of every core story in the world. Look at the syllabi of modern schools. They are similar in ways that were unimaginable just 100 years ago. Look also at the convergence of moral principles in documents such as the Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations, or the remarkable fact that in early 2024, 127 countries had committed to reaching net zero greenhouse gas emissions. Or look at the many conversations between religions that are revealing more and more common moral principles. Or look at emerging global rituals, such as the annual fireworks displays at midnight on New Year's Eve. I watch those every year from my house in Sydney. Or look at this global gathering of representatives of governments from all over the world. Building and nurturing a global core story has become a matter of great urgency because it can help us solve one of the fundamental challenges of our time. Can all humans work together despite being divided into competing nations and civilizations? Only if we share a common vision of the world, as the cells in our body share their DNA, will we be able to collaborate on building a good future for all humans and for the whole biosphere. So this is the challenge we face today. Can humans bridge the gap between the interests and perspectives of regional communities and those of humanity as a whole, so that they can work together to avoid catastrophe and build a better future? Here is an urgent task for leaders, governments, and educators everywhere. Can they help us build, disseminate, and improve a global core story that will enable us humans to work together on building a better future? And will we build that story in time to avoid catastrophe? Could the stakes be higher? I thank you for your attention.
Thank you for this session.
الحضور الكريم، نستمع الآن لكلمة رئيسية لسعادة المهندس داود الهاجري المدير العام لبلدية دبي بعنوان مدن الفرص.
Distinguished guests, our next session is titled Cities of Opportunities with His Excellency Engineer Dawood Al-Hajiri, Director General of Dubai Municipality. Please note that this session will be in Arabic. Kindly use your headsets for instant interpretation.
أصحاب المعالي والسعادة، الحضور الكريم، السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. نجتمع اليوم في هذه القمة بمشاركة أكثر من 100 مدينة حول العالم. نأتي من مدن وثقافات ولغات مختلفة، قد نتشابه أو نختلف في طموحاتنا وآمالنا كأفراد، ولكن تبقى رغبتنا كحكومات وقادة مدن متشابهة، وهي خلق مستقبل أفضل لأجيالنا القادمة. يقول سيدي صاحب السمو الشيخ محمد بن راشد آل مكتوم حفظه الله ورعاه: وظيفة الحكومات هي خلق الفرص للناس ليكونوا سعداء. الفرص هي الزاوية المختلفة في رحلتنا اليوم، زاوية أثبتت نجاحها في تشكيل مدن المستقبل. نسمع دائما مقولة أن الإنسان الناجح هو الإنسان الذي يقتنص الفرص، فهل تقتنص المدن الفرص أيضا؟ سنتحدث اليوم عن الفرص في قصة بناء المدن. إذا ما تأملنا القصة سنرى دائما أن المدن التي استطاعت أن تقتنص وتصنع الفرص هي المدن التي تقود المشهد العالمي. تختلف الفرص حول العالم وتتباين كذلك قدرات الحكومات في تمييز هذه الفرص. فإدراك الفرص هي موهبة لا نمتلكها نحن الأفراد بنفس المستوى، وبرأيي هذه الموهبة هي ما يميز القادة والحكومات في سباق تميز المدن. فنرى أن كثيرا من المدن حولت تحديات ضخمة لفرص، وبعضها خلقت الفرص من الموارد المتاحة وألهمت العالم. دعونا نستعرض أمثلة على هذه الموهبة من زاوية العالم. نظر العالم لكوفيد-19 على أنه تحدي، لكن هناك مدن حولت هذا التحدي لفرص، ساهمت في نموها الاقتصادي وسرعت تطوير البنية التحتية الرقمية في عدة مجالات، فأصبحت جاهزة ومستعدة تقنيا لأي تحدي مستقبلي. ومن زاوية أخرى، لا تنمية راسخة للشعوب بدون شراكة مع الشباب، ونحن لدينا 200 مليون شاب عربي، أي 200 مليون طاقة إيجابية كما يقول سيدي صاحب السمو الشيخ محمد بن راشد. أدركت بعض الدول أهمية الشباب في بناء المستقبل، فنظروا للشباب على أنهم فرصة، فشكلوا لهم الوزارات ووضعوا أولويات طموحة لتطويرهم وصناعة قصص نجاح معهم وبهم. وبمرور السنوات ستكون هناك فرص جديدة وتحديات جديدة، وعلى قادة المدن السعي أن يكون التغيير دائما فرصة لبناء مستقبل أفضل. ولكن كيف يمكن تحديد هذه الفرص؟ وكيف يمكن للمدن أن تسرع في اقتناصها؟ والجواب ببساطة هو في إطار مدن الفرص، والمكون من 5 محاور: الاقتصاد المعرفي والتكنولوجيا، الثقافة والمجتمع، البيئة، التخطيط وسهولة الوصول، والبنية التحتية. ويمكن اعتبار هذا الإطار نهج لفهم وتعزيز سرعة اقتناص الفرص داخل المدن. وبالحديث عن إطار الفرص لنسلط الضوء على أكبر فرصة غيرت مجريات الأحداث خلال العام السابق، وكانت الأكثر حضوراً وتأثيراً في مختلف مجالات الحياة، وهي الذكاء الاصطناعي. فالذكاء الاصطناعي يمثل فرصة غيرت وستغير المشهد العالمي، والإحصائيات تدل على ذلك. القيمة السوقية للذكاء الاصطناعي بلغت حتى اليوم 200 مليار دولار، ومن المتوقع أن تصل إلى 1.9 تريليون دولار بحلول عام 2030. كل هذا ساهم في أن تكون أكثر من 60% من قرارات الحكومات مبنية على تقنيات الذكاء الاصطناعي. هناك مدن اقتنصت فعلا هذه الفرص وحولتها لواقع اليوم، ونحن في بلدية دبي اقتنصنا الفرص في الذكاء الاصطناعي في مجالات العمل البلدي. ففي مجال التخطيط دائما تواجه الحكومات التوقعات العالية من السكان، وعليه تسعى الحكومات لتفي بهذه التوقعات المتسارعة. اقتنصنا نحن في بلدية دبي هذه الفرصة وبادرنا باستخدام الذكاء الاصطناعي الأربنست AI، حيث تعمل هذه الأدوات على مساعدة المخططين لتوليد حلول للبيئات الحضرية، بما يدعم تقديم توصيات دقيقة في تخطيط المدن. وقد نتج عن توظيف هذه التقنيات توفيرا في التكلفة والجهد بنسبة 80%. معالجة النفايات تشكل تحديا لمدن العالم. ننظر إليها في بلدية دبي على أنها فرصة اقتصادية ثمينة، فأصبحت النفايات تضيء 135 ألف وحدة سكنية في دبي عن طريق أكبر مركز لمعالجة النفايات وتحويلها إلى طاقة في العالم، الذي يعمل بالتقنيات الحديثة وأنظمة الذكاء الاصطناعي. كوب 28 فتح الآفاق لمدن العالم للوصول إلى الحياد المناخي، ونحن في بلدية دبي مرة أخرى استفدنا من فرصة النفايات من خلال إطلاق أول مشروع لتحويل النفايات العضوية إلى الوقود المستدام للطائرات، والمساهمة كذلك بتحقيق استراتيجية الحياد المناخي بحلول عام 2050 وتخفيض 1,000,000 طن من ثاني أكسيد الكربون. تعالج محطات الصرف الصحي في دبي أكثر من 360 مليون متر مكعب سنويا. نظرنا إلى هذا المورد على أنه فرصة لإطلاق برنامجنا الطموح دبي الخضراء، والذي استطعنا فيها من خلاله أن نزرع أكثر من 700 ألف شجرة خلال ال5 سنوات الماضية باستخدام المياه المعاد تدويرها، ومن خلال مشتل بلدية دبي الذي يعمل بالذكاء الاصطناعي وينتج 90 مليون شتلة سنويا. تتسابق المدن لخلق مساحات جذب جديدة واستثنائية، وبوجود فرص الممكنات التقنية وأنظمة السلامة المتطورة استطعنا أن نخلق تجربة جديدة في الشواطئ الليلية، فأصبحت شواطئ دبي لا تنام. ومع التوسع العمراني في المدن يبقى طموح الحكومات متمثل بتوفير أعلى معايير الصحة والسلامة والأمان، ما يكلف الحكومات موارد مالية وبشرية كبيرة. وبوجود هذا التحدي وفرص الذكاء الاصطناعي، فقد أطلقنا مع شركائنا استراتيجية إدارة عمليات المدينة في أفق دبي، والتي تهدف إلى تطوير العمليات واستخدام الطائرات من دون طيار وتقليل التكلفة التشغيلية للعمليات بنسبة 50%. وعندما نتحدث عن اقتناص الفرص في قصة تطور المدن، يتراود لذهننا مثال لدولة 52 عام، الدولة التي تحولت من صحراء إلى أكثر الدول تقدماً على خريطة العالم. حكومة الإمارات الأولى عالمياً في الكفاءة الحكومية. وصلنا المريخ بطموح شبابنا، وشعب الإمارات من أسعد الشعوب، أسموها دولة المعجزة، ونحن نقول هم من قادوا المعجزة وحولوا الحلم لحقيقة يعيشها أبناء الإمارات اليوم. صنعوا من حلم الاتحاد فرصة، قادت الفرص المؤسسين الأوائل الشيخ زايد بن سلطان آل نهيان والشيخ راشد بن سعيد آل مكتوم رحمهم الله. وبالحديث عن مدينة العالم والمستقبل، عن دبي الطموحة، عرفت دبي على المستوى العالمي أنها مدينة اقتناص الفرص. ليس ذلك وحسب، بل أنها مدينة تصنع الفرص لكل من سكانها والمقيمين فيها، لذلك كانت بيتاً كبيراً للجميع. ولأن موهبة اقتناص الفرص كانت حاضرة منذ البداية، حول الإحساس والحلم الذي راوده بأن تكون دبي مدينة متطورة للتجار والسكان والزوار. أنشأ شركة طيران، وكان هذا الإحساس تجسيداً حقيقياً لتحويل الأحلام لفرص اقتصادية ضخمة، لتصبح طيران الإمارات من أكبر الناقلات الجوية في العالم ونموذجاً عالمياً ملهماً. عندما لم يكن أحد يفكر في الإنترنت، أنشأ مدينة دبي للإنترنت لتصبح أكبر مجمع لتكنولوجيا المعلومات والاتصالات في المنطقة. نظر للإعلام على أنه فرصة منذ البداية، فأنشأ مدينة دبي للإعلام، وجعل من دبي مركزاً إقليمياً وعالمياً رائداً. وأصبح الإعلام اليوم لسان الحاضر والمستقبل وقوة ناعمة للشعوب. مد جسراً للخدمات المالية بين المنطقة والأسواق العالمية عن طريق مركز دبي المالي العالمي. الانتظار لم يكن خياره أبداً، فتح طرقاً عريضة للتجارة، وأرسى منهجاً للاقتصاد والتكنولوجيا، وجعل دبي عالماً كبيراً في مدينة صغيرة. قائد الفرص، صانع الأحلام، ملهم دبي والعالم، سيدي صاحب السمو الشيخ محمد بن راشد آل مكتوم. صنعت الأمل وصنعت من التحديات إنجازات، وحولت الأحلام لواقع نعيشه اليوم. شكراً.
Thank you, Your Excellency, for this main address. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, our next session is a conversation with Dr. Alex Karp, the co-founder and CEO of Palantir, titled Winners and Losers in the AI Age. This session is moderated by Becky Anderson from CNN.
Good morning. We have a full house on day 3. For those who are just joining us, very warm welcome to the World Government Summit, which has been absolutely terrific. Congratulations once again. We've been doing this for more than, 10 years now? This has been absolutely terrific. So congratulations to everybody involved. It is great to have you, Alex. When it comes to big data analysis, few companies have tracked the sort of path that Palantir has done, which employs its technology to solve problems of national security, military tactics. Former CIA Director David Petraeus has described your company as transformative in its impact on counter-terrorism. For those who don't know, and I'm sure most of you do here, but for those who don't, this was co-founded, 2003, some 20 years ago, by yourself and Peter Thiel, inked a contract with the CIA in 2005, and by 2010, as I understand it, the US government accounted for 70% of your business. 3 months after Russia's invasion of Ukraine, a meeting with President Zelensky saw you deploy data and artificial intelligence software to support Ukraine's defense in public health settings. Your software can track and contain the spread of deadly diseases. Given much of the work that you do is with governments and consequently is somewhat shrouded in secrecy, I think Palantir is at once seen as a fascinating company and at the same time quite frightening, but certainly a company that is full of intrigue. So I'm absolutely delighted to get this opportunity with you today. Let's start with a very simple question. When, to your mind, would you stick in a pin in the map of sort of emerging technologies and say AI arrived? When was that?
Well, there was a program in America, it's all public, Project Maven, and really, of course, Silicon Valley had no interest in defending its own culture, and so we ended up heavily involved. And in the beginning, we were only involved because I figured it's either us or somebody who is just going to take the money and burn it, and I didn't want that. So the military uses of what we call AI, which in this case would mean finding things that are not identifiable by humans in a time frame that is 100 to 1,000x faster than a human could do, began bearing fruits about 3 years ago. Obviously, it captured the public imagination with large language models, and then because of precursor technologies we built, we had a huge advantage, and that's why the U.S. commercial market for us is a bonanza. But yeah, but it's about, there's a lot of counterintuitive things about this revolution. But in fact, it's almost all counterintuitive, which is why it's so confusing for most people. But one of them is the starting point of it is not the starting point people realize. And then on the winners, losers, it's just very different than any other revolution, and that's why it has to be approached in a way that is with fresh eyes.
So let's talk about the winners and losers as you see them now, because that will help us perhaps sort of debunk some of the perhaps confusion that people have.
Well, part of the confusion is purposeful because U.S. tech is the dominant player, and in the U.S. context, they don't want anyone to know because, if you're the only people getting rich, you kind of try to hide that. Then I definitely view this country as, it's very counterintuitive to the words. The U.S. Emirates are U.S. because of a lot of the technologies are built there. But if you wanted to just do a simple diagnostic of who's going to win and who's going to lose, take this conference, print out the agenda and the people who attended, and measure every other conference against this. And what you'll see is, just a minute, they had the right people, they had the right topics, they had the right weighting of topics, they had the right understanding of the issues. Even there, this just shows you this is an expression of an underlying understanding of what the technology is, and that is inconceivably valuable in a world where very, very few people understand what the outlines of what large language models are, what they can do, what they can't do. Then in America, we have the problem that this is a revolution that will raise GDP, but at the same time, the relative delta between the poor and the rich is going to get even greater. So that's something no one wants to talk about. Then you have the problem, say, in continental Europe, where you're basically pretending the revolution isn't happening because it's the providers aren't from there. And then you have a culture like this one where you have a small number of people. It's much easier who are very technical. And then the whole issue of this isn't going to really help everyone as much as it will help a small group of people. That's not a problem.
So you have identified, as we start to look at winners and losers, you've identified the US and the Emirates. And I know you're not doing that because we're sitting here. I mean, you've clearly defined why it is.
No, I view one of my smarter decisions as investing here over a long period of time, primarily with my own energies and with our office. But this is a revolution where small beats big. So, and that's what you saw on the battlefield. That's what you see. Small, smart, already in tech, outperformed large, not as smart, basically. Where smart here means knowledgeable. But this is basically that times 1,000.
So you predicted, and I think it was just last month at Davos, that within a decade, around 95% of the world's top tech companies will be American, due to what you describe as the US lead in AI. So let's just be very clear about what it is that positions the US.
Well, it's currently like 84% of the top 50 companies, but that's purely, yeah. So, look, it's very hard to explain why these things work, why they do, why they don't. But the simple thing is, it's the large language model, even technically, it pen tests means it is actually putting pressure on your enterprise, on your culture, and the stronger and more robust your product already is, that's the unfairness of it. It's like if your product is already strong, if your culture is already strong, if your society is already strong, you leapfrog. It very much exposes weak products, weaker institutions, lies in your institutions, thinness in your institution to make a large language model actually work in a consumer environment. So like we power almost 20% of hospitals in the US. 2 years ago, we powered almost none. And it's because you need to be able to interact with the large language model without exposing your data, provide tooling to it so it's no longer a genius idiot, so you can task it with things while being able to constrict where it has access to and where the access control model, meaning who gets to decide, is not eviscerated. And so these are all things you would already need in an enterprise, just very few enterprises have them. And it's very similar culturally. If your people are technical and educated and loyal, you can build on top of that base and you just go like this. And then you have just, again, the inequality of all of it, which is very hard for people to accept. But that's an inequality defined in a way that is historically maybe not as relevant.
Well, there are implications, of course, for nations that don't have access to the same level of technology. How can we strike a balance in embracing the innovation of artificial intelligence and establishing regulations that ensure privacy, security, ethical considerations, and equity at the end of the day? Or are you saying that it doesn't matter?
I'm interested in people that are aligned with America, and people who run just and wonderful societies win. So there's the balance side of it. That's what we're taught to believe. I'm not interested in balance. I'm interested in winners, the winners winning. Now, then there's the equity side of it. It's like, how do you deal with it in America? The obvious reality that while GDP will grow, the people who are in this business are going to be 10, 100 times wealthier. And that's very hard to explain to a society. How do you build partnerships on the defense side with allies where you share the IP we've built and they can build on top of it, which we're doing. So we're giving to allies or selling to allies infrastructure that will allow them to use AI that they build. So there are ways to share in the proceeds and in the actual benefits, but I don't think the idea that everyone wins is it all going to work, and I'm definitely not part of that view.
What does the commercial space look like for you, and what are you taking from the work that you have done, which has to date been majority government-led, into the commercial domain? I just want this audience to get a real sense of where you see the opportunities.
It was historically commercial until about 2 years ago, and now, like, certainly if you do customer numbers, it's primarily commercially led in the U.S. And what I'm learning is, you can, like, there are just a lot of products out there that it's poetry. Like, you just get poetry. So, and people doing all sorts of PowerPoints. But if you show up to customers, I go all over America and I say, take all your best products, everything you've done, any vendor, and then compare it to what you can do in Palantir in 10 hours. And you're basically comparing, it's unfair because you're comparing a poetry on, I want to task a satellite to tell me when weather conditions are going to affect my agricultural product. I want to task my enterprise to tell me when churn is likely to happen under these contexts. I want to be able to have a right function in this part of my enterprise. I'm interested in margins, or in the hospital context, I want to more efficiently allocate and more justly allocate beds. I want to make sure that doesn't happen on class, race, background. I want to get nurses and doctors involved, and then the margins are completely different. You can do this within weeks. And so then the use case I'm most excited about in commercial is you can take culturally specific manufacturing. So we power a battery company from Japan in America. So you can build the factory like it was built in Japan. You can teach workers and manage those workers and have them manage production as if they were Japanese workers, but with a cultural identity, in this case American, could be Emirati. So de facto, you can now build things that could only be built in one culture in another culture. And so this has incredible, almost incomprehensible impact on cultures, because now it's like, well, we could only build ships in the past in this one culture. Yeah, but now you can build them in Kansas City. And you can build them with workers who are not as technical. And you can do this. So that alone changes the GDP of cultures. It changes the ability of cultures to invest and do things that were not possible in the past.
There is some authentic concern out there, which I wonder whether you sympathise with, empathise with, have any consideration for the risks of outsourcing data analysis and decision making based on data analysis to a machine algorithm. Do you see a risk in us ceding decision-making control to large, powerful AI models who, of course, while smart, are not human?
Look, there's the general risk of what happens when the computer takes over. Then there's the intermediate risk, which is what you're talking about. But again, the risk you've outlined is architecturally controllable. Your enterprise, for example, our product, will allow you to granularly control what things are controlled by the computer, what things are controlled by algorithms. There's something in software called a right function, meaning who gets to have the decision. This can be controlled down to this individual, sub-individual in this role, but you need the right products to do it. And so a lot of not all, but a lot of the concerns in this area are because your software is software that was built for a world that was non-disjointed, peaceful, where your software product was primarily sales, where you did not have an enterprise where software and software-defined products, both in military and commercial, powered to some extent by AI, where that was not the case. And so one of the big problems with reducing everything to a moral discussion is, in many cases, the moral discussion is actually masks intellectual and commercial engineering ineptitude. So it's like these are engineering problems.
So is this about messaging then? Is this about communicating?
No, it's about the engineering actually working. It's not a messaging problem. It's like, and that's again why a small culture, whether it's Silicon Valley or the Emirates, massively outperforms a larger culture, because there are moral and equity issues here, no doubt. But a lot of the issues we pretend are moral are actually engineering. Who controls the AI? Under what conditions can it write to something? What kind of decisions can be made on the battlefield? Who gets to decide between life and death is very similar, not morally, not intellectually, but technically. Who controls where the satellite flies? Who tasks the satellite? Is it a human? Is it a computer? Under what conditions?
Who should it be?
Well, there's a lot. It depends the context. So, if you're running a massive agricultural arm, you probably want the business person to say, I want to expend this amount of resources on satellite coverage in return. That's not a moral decision. It's a competence decision. If you make it incorrectly, you will be defeated by the person installing a better product.
You were very bullish about the States. You've said that you see that as the US, with regard tech, as a winner going forward. You've name-checked the Emirates, and you've been, not so enthusiastic about Europe, for example.
Well, and I spent half my life. I want Europe to win.
Right.
We need to admit, the first step in winning is recognizing where you're at. And so, you have to,
Yeah, can I then just stop, because you've been very bullish about the States, and yet you and your longtime deputy, Nicholas Zamiska, writing a new book, The Technological Republic, it promises to be a sweeping indictment of Silicon Valley, as I understand it. And you've talked about Silicon Valley having lost its way.
Well, that's lost its moral way, but the primary mistake Silicon Valley makes is that because the obvious truth that a lot of the high-quality revenue of the world is going to flow to Silicon Valley has decided to obfuscate that by embracing the thinnest, most obvious half-lies ever produced that are only there to make you feel comfortable at the fact you're losing, while they migrate all high-quality revenue to...
Just explain what you mean by that.
Let's pretend we're doing nothing bad while running while running companies that reduce your intellectual acuity down to some kind of fake affiliation to which you don't belong. I mean, it's like over and over and over and over again. But the more important thing to understand is it is a way of explaining to the world, I win, you lose, but you get to pretend you're happy because you get to participate in an ideology that doesn't work. And again, if you can, what the book is actually about, and it's not that really, it's like how do you raise a civilization where people have an ability to repel these obvious half-lies? And there are many ways to do it. One way is to have enormous internal integrity in your culture, like the Emirates. Another way to do it is to teach classic liberalism or embrace religious backgrounds. The way we've done the way we're doing it in our elite culture is the haves convince the almost haves that they're participating in something they're not participating in. And by the way, this has massive technical consequences, because then the leaders embrace things that will never work technically, because they feel like the thin ideology that they've embraced will also work technically, when in fact you have to go very deep to understand the actual underpinnings of an enterprise, of technical products, and how they work. And it's that laziness, that the comfort with laziness, that will undermine your company, your culture, your society, and everybody who's interested in full alignment with their company, culture, and society has to find a way to fight against it. And that's what it's actually about. And that's what you see in all modesty, in our products. They're metaphors for fighting back against that.
You are a warrior for Western values, for democracy. Democracy around the world is under attack. I mean, we face what are ostensibly
the primary thing that is eviscerating democracy, it's always produced as like, I'm not against fighting fake things. It's, you have to fix actual problems. Democracy is not an excuse for having nothing that works. If it does not work, nobody is going to buy into it. And one of the most important things we have to push back on is, it can't work because we have these 5 things that don't work. Nobody has time for that. We are in very dangerous times. Every part of your society actually has to work. How do you define work? I put in $1, I get more than $1 out. That's working. It's not working, and the people who purvey that massively underestimate the intelligence of the people they're talking to. People have no time for that, and if you're spending time on this, it's, we invest lots and nothing happened, and we invest more and nothing happened. It's not the input, it's the output. And it's like we need a relentless focus on that across the world. And that is the only thing that will stabilize a society. And everything else just malfunctions, misfunctions, corrodes your society, and produces the worst people ever, because only the people who use that to advance themselves understand it doesn't work, and they understand they can manipulate people like that. It has to be fought against at every element.
And to that point, Alex, I just want to close with this, because I'd be remiss if I didn't ask this. There are growing concerns about AI's role in the sort of disruption that we see around the world at present. False and misleading information fueled by AI was top of the global risks report released at Davos this year. Do you share these concerns? It was at the top of a lot of people's
top of a list of. I compare this conference to that conference. I don't want to get, it's just, yes, of course it's a problem, but the primary problem is not disinformation, which I'm against and I would help fight, but the primary problem is that the people listen to it because primary functions of their government aren't working, and they're asking themselves, why doesn't it work? And so you have to fix those underlying functions. Pretending that is the primary risk to democracy is totally a backfire move. Of course it's a risk. Of course it should be dealt with. Of course security services should fight this. Foreign influence into a country is illegal, unethical, and should be fought. And I would be happy to help out fighting that. But the primary risk to a society is not fake information. It's a society that's willing to believe the fake information because they're wondering, why doesn't my school work? Why doesn't my border work? Why have I been taught things in school that don't work? Why do I know nothing about software? Why am I being told that poetry will pay my bills when in fact it's not even good poetry? It's like that is the primary risk to a society. And all this other stuff is just a way of saying, I cannot deal with the primary problems. I can deal with the secondary problems, and it won't work.
I wish we had more time. We don't. We're out of time. Alex Karp, co-founder and CEO of Palantir Technologies, we thank you very much indeed for joining us this morning.
Thank you for this session.
أصحاب السمو والمعالي، الحضور الكريم، تنعقد الآن جلسة معالي الدكتور عبد الحميد الدبيبة رئيس حكومة الوحدة الوطنية في ليبيا، يحاوره الإعلامي عمار تقي.
Your Highnesses, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, our next session is a conversation with His Excellency Dr. Abdel Hamid Dbeibeh, Prime Minister of the State of Libya. This session is moderated by Ammar Taqi. Please note that this session will be in Arabic. Kindly use your headsets for instant interpretation.
أسعد الله صباحكم جميعا. الحديث حول الشأن الليبي حديث ذو شجون، خصوصا إذا خذينا بعين الاعتبار الأوضاع الصعبة اللي تمر بها ليبيا من بعد 2011 تحديدا، حروب وصراعات ونزاعات كثيرة استمرت على مدى أكثر من 10 سنوات في ليبيا. هذا البلد اللي يستحق منه الكثير. وأيضا إذا أخذنا بعين الاعتبار مرحلة ما قبل 2011 أيضا الوضع في ليبيا كان صعب. لكن احنا إذا نبي نركز على الجوانب السلبية ممكن يستغرق منا الوقت طويل، لكن دائما هناك في أمور إيجابية وبوادر إيجابية في كل عمل رغم وجود صراع في ليبيا. تحديدا يمكن من سنة 2021 المشهد في ليبيا بدأ يتغير، بوادر إيجابية بدأت تظهر على السطح، بصيص أمل بدأ يظهر من ليبيا تحديدا من 2021. من خلال البحث خلال الأيام السابقة تحضيرا لهذه الجلسة، على سبيل المثال اكتشفت بعض الأمور كانت صدمة بالنسبة لي أنا شخصياً لما كنت أتحدث مع بعض الأصدقاء حول الشأن الليبي. يعني مثال بسيط جداً، بس هذا المثال البسيط يعكس إيش الوضع اليوم في ليبيا. في ليبيا في ملعب رئيسي اللي هو ملعب طرابلس الدولي. هذا الملعب الرئيسي في طرابلس من سنة 1968 لم يجرى لهذا الملعب أي مينتننس رئيسي ولا أي تطوير. من 1968 في آخر سنتين تم تطوير هذا الملعب بشكل كامل from A to Z، وافتتاحه راح يكون إن شاء الله في 1 مارس القادم. هذا يعتبر بصيص أمل. آخر مشروع لبناء مدارس جديدة في ليبيا كان سنة 92. من بعدها توقف بناء أي مدرسة جديدة في ليبيا. الآن تم الإعلان عن مشروع بناء مدارس جديدة 1500 مدرسة جديدة، وانتقال المدارس اللي موجودة في ليبيا المعروفة، من يتابع الشأن الليبي معروفة المدارس هناك باسم مدارس الصفيح، إلى مدارس حديثة. في يناير 2021 عدد السفارات من بعد 2011 إلى 2021 عدد السفارات اللي في ليبيا كانوا سفارتين فقط، حسب معلوماتي سفارتين فقط. من بعد فبراير 2021 حتى يوم أمس عدد السفارات اللي موجودة في ليبيا اليوم 41 سفارة، إضافة إلى مشاريع كثيرة بدأت استراتيجية بدأت في ليبيا. الخلاصة من هذه المقدمة المهمة أن هناك بصيص أمل جديد رغم الصراع المستمر في ليبيا. نتأمل إن شاء الله أن هذا الأمل يزداد أكثر في ظل الوضع الحالي. بعد هذه المقدمة تسمحوا لي أرحب باسمكم بضيفي في هذه الجلسة معالي دولة رئيس حكومة الوحدة الوطنية في ليبيا المهندس عبد الحميد الدبيبة. صبحك الله بالخير.
أهلا وسهلا.
آسف مرة ثانية على الإطالة في المقدمة.
لا
كان مهم هذا الشرح في البداية.
يشرفني ذلك.
الله يسلمك.
كلام طيب.
في ظل هذا الصراع عجلة التنمية بدأت تسير الآن في ليبيا، والمفارقة أن الصراع اللي كان صراع سلاح في السابق الآن بدأ يتحول إلى صراع بناء، بس أيضا هناك تحديات موجودة أمامكم دولة الرئيس اليوم.
هو بسم الله والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد، ورحب بكل المشاركين في هذا الاجتماع المهم الحقيقة اللي يلتقي فيه كل العالم لأجل الاستفادة من خبرات بعضهم البعض. ليبيا أعتقد أن كل شخص عربي إذا كان ما يعرف ليبيا يسمع عليها. نحن الله سبحانه وتعالى حبانا بكثير من النعم، سواء من الموقع، سواء من الأجواء، سواء من الثروات الطبيعية. لكن ليبيا منذ تاريخ نشأتها بعد الحروب العالمية الثانية والأولى أعتقد أنها مرت بتجارب صعبة. التجربة الوحيدة التي كانت فيها بعض الإضاءات وهي الملكية، ولم تدم طويلا، وحتى الديمقراطية التي يسعى إليها الليبيين لم تكن الحقيقة ذو قاعدة سليمة. انتخاب الرئيس وقوانين الانتخابات الرئاسية لم تحدث في ليبيا أبدا، ولأول مرة يحدث برلمان ليبي في 2012 بعد ثورة 17 فبراير. طبعا ليبيا مرت بمراحل انتكست فيها الاقتصاد، وانتكس فيها مراحل كانت تجربة للاشتراكية والشيوعية وتجارب الكتب الرنانة، تجارب شخصية، مراحل كانت مراحل صعبة وصعبة للشعب الليبي. الاقتصاد الليبي بدون أي عنوان لا يعرف إلا مصلحته، وهذه الفترة من قبل اكتشاف النفط إلى 2011. وكانت هذه 2011 الحقيقة تجربة، أقصى تجربة أو أصعب تجربة يعيشها الشعب الليبي، وهو دخل في مراحل القتال في بعضه، وهذا لم يكن تاريخيا موجود إلا بعض اختلافات القبلية في بعض القبائل. ودخلنا في معركة طبعا قبل هذه العراك والاختلافات كانت حقيقة دخلنا في مشاريع وهمية، كنا اتهمنا بالإرهاب، اتهمنا بقصف الطائرات، اتهمنا بقتل الأبرياء في أماكن عدة في العالم، ووضع علينا خيمة، وهو خيمة أن نحن شعب إرهابي وشعب لسنا مثل باقي شعوب العالم. الشعب الليبي يريد الحياة، يريد المعيشة الصالحة، يريد أن يبني نفسه، يريد أن يعمل اقتصاد. أتت 17 فبراير ووزع السلاح بين الليبيين، وبدأ مرحلة أصعب من المراحل الأولى من خلال التجارب التي مر بها قبل 2011. وتقاتل الليبيين ودخلنا في معارك، ولله الحمد في بعد أتينا لحكومتنا كانت كثير من الدول، وكان في اجتماع في الأمم المتحدة تحت رعاية الأمم المتحدة، واخترنا كحكومة مؤقتة لتذهب بالليبيين إلى الانتخابات والقوانين الدستورية. عجزنا الحقيقة في الفترة الماضية على صناعة دستور، وهذا أكبر المشاكل التي نواجهها وما زلنا نواجهها. رأينا ليبيا سجية ميتة الحقيقة، حتى التنفس كان فيها معدوم، لا مدارس ولا طرق. هذه حلم في الجنوب أن نصين طريق، في باقي الدول الحقيقة المقارنة لنا بنت وتطورت نفسها في هذه المرحلة الصعبة. وعليه أتينا أولا أطلقنا وهذه تجربة الحقيقة كانت تجربة صعبة لنا في أثناء ومباشرة بعد الخلاف وبعد الصراعات. أطلقنا مشروع وهو مشروع عودة الحياة. نريد عودة الأكسجين إلى الجسم الليبي، والحمد لله كما ذكرت تقدمنا في هذا المجال. حتى النفط كان موقوف، حتى سلعة النفط الرئيسية التي نمون بها حياتنا وقفت في مرحلة من المراحل، أو تم الحقيقة غصبا. شركات الطيران وقف. ليبيا أصبحت دولة موبوءة، ويشير إليها أن هي دولة فاشلة. أول شيء رأينا في المواطن الليبي الذي يحتاج إلى رعاية. أولا في دخول المواطن، كل الشعب الليبي رجع للدولة واحتمي بها لأن هي الوحيدة التي تدفع مرتبات، وترك القطاع الخاص. اهتمينا بالقطاع الخاص، اهتمينا بالمدرسين، اهتمينا بالموظفين، زدنا قيمة المرتبات بشكل كبير جدا. اللي كان يدفع في الذخائر والقنابل والدبابات بدأنا نضعه في رصف أو إعادة صيانة الطرق، إعادة صيانة الهيكلية التعليمية. الكهرباء كان في ليبيا يقطع أو لا نرى الكهرباء في أكثر من 20 ساعة في اليوم. بعد هذا المشروع المدارس، الصحة كانت أكبر مشاكل في ليبيا، وهو القطاع الصحي.
الكهرباء دولتك كانت تقطع في اليوم مدة 10 سنوات 20 ساعة
20 ساعة لمدة أكثر من 7-8 سنوات. تأتي مرات في 3-4 ساعات انقطاع، ولكن وصلت حتى 20 ساعة في اليوم.
والوضع
اليوم نحمد الله سبحانه وتعالى، لنا 1.5 سنة لم يقطع الكهرباء حتى دقيقة واحدة، ولله الحمد. هذا إنجاز. جئنا في وضع، حتى في وضع الكورونا الحقيقة، أول ما كلفنا بهذه المهمة الصعبة كانت الكورونا. وفي كثير من الليبيين اليوم يتكلمون على الفساد ملفات الفساد في الكورونا. لقينا حوالي أكثر من 4 مليار دينار مصروفات على الكورونا، ولم يأتي أو تأتي جرعة واحدة من الفاكسين في الكورونا. الحمد لله بمعية وبمعونة الشيخ محمد بن زايد الحقيقة، اللي جيته وطلبته وقال لي بالحرف الواحد احنا نصنع هذا الفاكسين
الروسي
ونقسمه بيننا وبينكم. وهذا كان أول مؤشر وأول بداية علاقتي مع الشيخ محمد شخصيا الحقيقة، وبارك الله فيه في هذا المحفل. طبعا المرحلة الأولى من أن ليبيا تعود إلى العالم، برنامج عودة الحياة في كل مناحي الحياة. في الخارجية بدأنا الشغل في عدة طرق. أتكلم مع أخوتنا العرب، الجامعة العربية، رغم التحديات ورغم الخلاف السياسي ورغم كل المشاكل التي تحدث، قفلنا أوداننا على كل المشاكل وذهبنا إلى الأمام لبحث مصلحة الشعب الليبي. اليوم الطيران يرجع طيران إلى طرابلس، ولله الحمد أكثر من ممكن 100 رحلة في الأسبوع لبعض الدول، كيف تركيا والإمارات وتونس والمغرب ومصر وإيطاليا اليوم ومالطا. السفارات كما قلنا كان فيه 2 سفراء بقوا في ليبيا في هذه الصراعات. اليوم ولله الحمد 42 سفير مقيمين في طرابلس ويتمتعوا بالأجواء الأمنية الرائعة في طرابلس. وندعو من هذا المنبر طبعا احنا ممكن مراحلنا ما زالت حتى نقيم مهرجان أو ملتقى كهذا الملتقى، ولكن أدعو كل المهتمين بليبيا ومهتمين بالوطن العربي أن يزورونا ويطلعوا علينا ويتفقدونا، لأن احنا قريب وصلنا إلى القاع، ولكن ولله الحمد من الله أن شدينا على أزار بعضنا ورقينا بمعونة وبمعية أصحابنا وناسنا وأشقائنا في كل الدول، واللي هي حريصة كانت على الليبيين.
هذه دعوة إن شاء الله.
إن شاء الله
يكون لنا لقاء أيضا إن شاء الله في طرابلس في الوقت القريب إن شاء الله. أمس دولة الرئيس كان لك تصريح مهم، حاولت أني أصيغ عبارة أخرى يعني. تصريح مهم جدا ويتعلق في مسألة الدعوم تحديدا، وهذا التصريح البعض فسره بشكل سلبي والبعض لم يفهم مغزى هذا التصريح، والبعض فسره أن ليبيا أو الحكومة الليبية الحالية الآن مقبلة على مسألة رفع الدعوم في ليبيا. إذا ممكن توضح لنا أكثر هذه الجزئية بما تبقى لنا من وقت.
هو لابد أن ناخذ وقت لما نتكلم على ليبيا، لكن البرنامج واضح أنه هو محكم. طبعا الدعم في ليبيا من خلال التجارب الاشتراكية والشيوعية وما أدراك، دخلت في تجارب الحقيقة وهي دعم السلع ودعم المحروقات وكل شيء توفره لك الدولة، وأنت تبقى جامدا في بيتك تأكل وتشرب الأكل الذي يقرر لك فيه من هذه. وهذه ليبيا للحقيقة كثير من الإخوة في العالم لم يعرفها، ولكن كنا كذلك. الأكل، الخبز، المواد الغذائية، احنا ناكل في الباستا كثير كانت مدعومة، وتم إلغاء كل الدعم ولله الحمد من خلال دعم مرتبات الليبيين. طبعا فيه الدعم الكبير كان في الوقود بمجرد اكتشاف النفط في ليبيا وهو يدعم. الليتر الوقود أو البنزين في ليبيا اليوم 3 سنت من الدولار. أرخص دولة
في العالم
متوفر فيها في العالم. ممكن في دولة يقال أنها كانت فنزويلا ولا كذا، ولكن إحنا كيف نرفع هذا الدعم وكيف نستبدله بدعم المواطن؟ طبعا هذه تجربة الحقيقة فكرنا فيها من الأول، لأن تم استغلال هذا الدعم لتهريب الوقود. يهرب أكثر من 50 أو 60% من هذا الوقود يهرب لدول الجوار، ويهرب حتى للدول الأوروبية المقابلة أو المحاذية لليبيا. أنا أقول لكم أنها الحقيقة في الجنوب الليبيين يشتروا بسعر العادي الدولار ويهرب. قررنا الحقيقة هو استبدال الدعم للوقود بدفع هذا الدعم مباشرة إلى جيوب الليبيين أو جيوب المواطن. طبعا ليبيا والليبيين تعودوا منذ فترة وهم يشترون اللتر البنزين ب3 سنت طبعا، واليوم سعر العالمي أو سعر الدولي يصل إلى 70 سنت. الفارق كبير جدا. طبعا فتحنا حوار مجتمعي باش نغيروا فكرة الليبيين أن هذا الدعم استبداله لصالح جيوبكم أفضل من استبداله أو من تهريبه لصالح المهربين والمخربين، وأنتم كل مرة تسمعوا فيه. وهذا أكبر امتحان ممكن نواجهوه كحكومة، وفتحنا حوار، وأعتقد أن بعون الله هذا الدعم الذي يدعمه الحكومة دعم كبير. احنا وصلنا ل 60 مليار دينار، حوالي 20 مليار دولار، وهذا مبلغ كبير جدا يذهب في الهواء.
طيب أنا باجي لي 59 ثانية، صارت 58 ثانية الحين. موضوع مهم جدا، أي تنمية أي ازدهار يحتاج استقرار سياسي.
نعم.
وأمس كان لك أيضا تصريح على قناة سكاي نيوز عربية تحدثت فيه عن أن هذه آخر حكومة انتقالية في ليبيا، وأن المرحلة القادمة يجب أن تشهد انتخابات. خارطة الطريق في نصف دقيقة كيف ستكون في ليبيا؟
دقيقة حقيقة نستأذنهم، ممكن نزيدوا نصف ثانية أو دقيقة أخرى. طبعا احنا وجود حكومتنا من ثلاثي رئيس مجلس الرئاسي ورئيس الحكومة، وشكلنا الحكومة كان في اتفاق ليبيين كملتقى حوار، وأتينا كآخر حكومة انتقالية أو آخر حكومة ترانزاكشن government قبل الانتخابات. وكنا نأمل من مجلس النواب وأن يخرج الدستور اللي هو اعتمد من لجنة الدستور ويطرحه للاستفتاء. نحن طلبنا أن يطلعوا الدستور وأعطوه للناس للاستفتاء إذا كان رفض بنعم أو لا. طبعا الدستور لم يطرح للليبيين، قوانين انتخابية حقيقية لم تخرج من البرلمان. نحن نعلن من هذا المنبر أننا بعون الله سنكون آخر حكومة انتقالية. نريد قوانين عادلة وليست مفصلة تحت لأي فئة، ونريد دستور حقيقي يستفتي عليه الليبيين. ونحن سنكون أول حكومة تسلم لمن يختاره البرلمان الجديد ومن يختاره رئيسا للبلاد. نحن لسنا متشبتين بأي شيء، ولكن بعون الله سنضع أركان هذا الدستور الذي يحتاجه الليبيين، وبعون الله سنصل بليبيا باستقرارها بدعم كل أصدقائنا وأحبابنا وناسنا ودعم الشعب الليبي، أننا يوم من الأيام حتسمعون أن الانتخابات وفق دستور حقيقي معتمد ومبرمج وقابل للتنفيذ وللتطبيق من الشعب الليبي
بإذن الله تعالى. رئيس حكومة الوحدة الوطنية في ليبيا المهندس عبد الحميد دبيبة، كل الشكر لك، ونتمنى دائما الازدهار والاستقرار إلى ليبيا. كل الشكر لك وشكرا لكم جميعا لحضوركم،
وأنا أدعوكم مرة ثانية
إلى طرابلس إن شاء الله.
Thank you, Your Excellency, for this session.
أيها الحضور الكريم، سنستأنف الجلسة التالية بعد قليل.
Ladies and gentlemen, we will resume our next session shortly.
أصحاب السمو والمعالي، الحضور الكريم، الجلسة التالية حوار مع نجم بوليوود ورائد الأعمال شاه روخ خان يحاوره ريتشارد كويست من قناة CNN.
Your Highnesses, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, our next session is a conversation with Shah Rukh Khan, Bollywood celebrity and entrepreneur. This session is moderated by Richard Quest from CNN.
It's not often that I'm downright intimidated by the person I'm about to interview. Kristalina Georgieva, easy for lunch. But SRK is a legend, aren't you?
You're being very sweet, Richard. Like I told you, I'm not a legend. I'm Bond, James Bond. I told you that at the backstage. Yeah.
Say that again, go on. What's your name?
Bond, James Bond.
Would you like to play Bond?
I'd really wanted to, but I think I'm too short.
What about Bond Baddie?
Baddie, yes, of course. I'm brown enough.
If we look at your career, how many years?
Now, I think actively including television, 33 years now. I've been actively working as an actor.
But to have reached the level of stardom that you have reached, and for the length of time, is quite an achievement. It's more than that. It's a huge achievement. But it speaks to more than just, obviously, the raw talent, but it also speaks to perseverance, the ability to keep going, which is something that's so crucial.
I think it's, perseverance is, I think it happens to some people. You don't have any option but to persevere. So maybe when I was young, I lost my parents very early, and then you realize that, okay, there's no rewinding this, there's no coming back from death, and you have to continue, make the most of what you have. So I was kind of a youngish orphan, and I had to work my way through it. Or it could be just part of nature, it's the nature of the beast that you are just with dogged determination, you keep on working.
Where does that come from?
I don't know, I've always tried to analyze it, that, why do I do what I do? Why do I wake up in the morning and just start doing it all over again, even when it's... I think it taught me, the work that I do, making films, the result happens very suddenly. You think you made the best of films, you think it's the nicest of stories to tell, you think the world is going to love it, and you wake up on a Friday morning and realize it's the biggest flop of your career. And you're like,
which happened?
Which happens, yeah, which happens more often than not. Or sometimes you don't like a film and that becomes the biggest hit of your career, and you say, like, how did this happen? But what I realized, and I want to say this to everyone actually, and I say this to everyone who's working with me or people who know me, that on Thursday evening, because our films release on Fridays, mostly, or Thursday evenings here in Dubai. So Thursday evening at home in Mumbai, I rinse myself with a 2-hour bath and rinse myself of the work that I've done. Because what happens...
Well, hang on.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that bath.
It's a ritual, yeah.
Is it a ritual? I mean, do you put special oils and scents? Do you have bath salts? Do you prepare with candles?
I'm not telling you my secret. You come and take a bath with me. Easy. I'm an actor. I'll show you how to do it.
Should I take him up on his offer? Carry on, sir.
Okay. No, but honestly, I do, because, I realize when you do a big hit film, it's done well and you're very happy and everybody's jumping around. Friday happens, Saturday happens, Sunday happens. And you realize this is a big blockbuster, but Monday I have to get back to work to make a better film. You made a flop film, Friday you're sad, Saturday you're crying, Sunday you're moping and you're not waking up from bed. Monday, you have to get back to work and start making a better film. So Mondays are for trying to make better films always, so you have to persevere.
Okay, but let me be crude. You don't need the money.
No, I need the money.
Oh, you do?
The bath oils are very expensive.
Fine. If you had to define the quintessential SRK film, what would it be?
I've said this before. I was telling you behind. I don't know when it happened, Richard, to be honest. I didn't realize it. I never wanted to be someone who's, like I say, peddling love or seller of dreams. I wanted to be an action guy with 8 packs and beat up people, be in a white vest, girl on my side with a Glock in my hand, and speak in baritone and things like that. But I never got the opportunity. I don't know. When I started off, suddenly everybody started to think of me as someone who's, promising hope, giving hope, and spreading love, like I spread my arms again and again. So I think my regular film would be a film that gives you hope, gives you goodness, gives you happiness, and at the end of it all, lots of good songs.
Yes, but you've also, there's a great YouTube video, 4 minutes of your best entrances.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of action in them.
Yeah, only entries, no exits. I just keep entering again and again. My kids get very, when I have 3 kids, and whenever that video plays, and I have to tell you a secret, we've compiled it from the office. I think it looks just very cool. It's not made by others. We've made it. So whenever a show like this happens, and if you allow me to show a video here, we'll show you me just entering some places and very dramatically and romantically. But my kids make a lot of fun of it. You know, whenever I get a little serious with them, they'll just look at me and say, "Oh my God, he's doing those entries from his video, SRK." So it does become a...
Do you want to give us a...
Oh yeah, I can do that, I can do that.
Yeah, just,
you want to walk along?
With your permission, sir, we'll...
If it's okay, yeah.
Yeah, go on. Go on. Is there something you would not do? On screen?
On screen, I don't know, I wouldn't be... I'd like to give hope in my films. The stories that I tell, I hope they end with hope. I know I've done some really sad films also. I've done films which are tragedies. But somewhere down the line, I just hope that I can give hope in films. So I don't like to give hopeless cinema or hopeless stories, because I think in life and in businesses and in jobs and world, there's enough sadness.
So you're extremely well known here, obviously because of the Indian population that is here and elsewhere. But you like it here. You have a home. You are not a here today, gone tomorrow person for Dubai.
No. I spend a lot of time here. I have a beautiful house which has been given to me by Nakhil, and it's one of the nicest places in the world because nobody troubles me. And His Excellency the Prime Minister also just told me that he stays next to it. So the next New Year party is with him. He's a good neighbor. But it's really nice. I really enjoy being in Dubai. I really love being here.
And you find the juxtaposition with going back to Mumbai?
No, this is very easy. It's just 2.5 hours away.
Right.
So I keep dropping in. We come with the kids. And there's so much to do here. I'm sounding like the tourist ambassador of Dubai suddenly, right?
Everybody asks about crossover. And I'm no different. Because the more I researched you, the more I wondered. I mean, all right, supposedly 2011 DiCaprio never happened. Supposedly, allegedly, Slumdog Millionaire you turned down, allegedly. Why hasn't the crossover taken place? I don't see why it should. You're a big enough name in your own genre, but why has crossover not taken place?
I've said this honestly, but nobody believes it. So I'm going to say it to you very, very honestly. Nobody's ever offered me any work, crossover, of substance. I may have had conversations with people. I know lots of lovely people from the West, from the English film industry, from the American film industry. But nobody's offered me any good work. You know, I hear actors talk about, oh yes, I want to crossover, I want to take Indian cinema. I think I still have to learn how to be able to deliver to the audience that likes me. And, you know, instead of spreading myself too thin. And then, yeah, of course, if you've not been offered a job, how do you take it? So really, I've never been offered a film in Hollywood or in England. Yes, Slumdog was there, now that you mention it. And I spent a lot of time with Mr. Boyle. He's very sweet. But I was doing Who Wants to Be a Millionaire on television.
Successfully
at that time. And I just felt in the story that was being told, the guy who was hosting was very mean. In the story that was being told. And I'm like, you know, I'm here doing Slumdog Millionaire. And the guys who were producing the show wanted me to do the film. I just found it, you know, this guy's... I was cheating and being dishonest as the host. So I just found that it's very strange that I'm being a host and I'm cheating in the film. So I explained to Mr. Boyle that I wouldn't like to do it, please. And they're way better actors than me. And I think Mr. Anil Kapoor did it, and he was fantastic as the host.
when the person's getting close to 1 million, well, the top in Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, that moment, what do you feel?
Genuinely, when I was hosting it, I would hope they win it. I really, really hope they win it.
But I've done a quiz show myself, and there comes a point when you think, how close can I get to getting them to win it without...
Yeah.
Did you know what I mean?
I always did that, you know, when I was, because there's so many people from different parts of the country, and I really want them to win, and yes, you do try to be a little helpful.
But you can't.
But you can't, because the producer keeps shouting in your ears, don't, you've said enough, you can't talk about it. And unfortunately, the last 4 questions or the last 2 questions are extremely difficult, you know, suddenly they're thrown upon you, and you're like, oh my God, this person is not going to get the answer. And I feel really bad. And I try to think, I wish I had some hint, and I can't mislead the person by trying to give that hint, because I also mostly didn't know the answer.
So what is left that you have not done that you would like to do? And by that, I that's not a Hollywood question. That is a general, you know, even within within Indian films, within production, within what still remains on your list?
So, Richard, when I started off, I just wanted to survive. You know, be able to get a week's work or a month's work or a year's work and say, okay, my films should do well. But as years have gone past, I think my whole job has become more and more motivated towards bringing a new technology into Indian film industry. I want to end my career, which is far from ending right now. I have another good 35 years to go. I really, really want to make that film which is loved by the whole world, and then nobody on a big stage like this asks me, why haven't you crossed over? That film should cross me over. That's my dream. I'd want you to learn Hindi and Urdu and Arabic to be able to understand that film.
Did you go on a massive retreat of personal introspection between 2018 and 2023? You just had 2 or 3 films that were not as successful. Suddenly he disappears, and everybody thinks, oh, he's licking his wounds, he's feeling sorry for himself, whatever. And then he comes back in 23 with 3 blockbusters. What was going on in that interim period?
So you're very kind. Yes, I had massive flops, and they did very, very badly. And I was doing all of that. I was licking my wounds. I was not in... you know what I did?
Yeah.
For 4 years?
Go on.
I've never said this to anyone, though I've mentioned it, but today, here, I'll tell everyone. I learned how to make the best pizza in the world. That's what I did. Honest to God. I stopped listening to stories. I stopped wanting to tell stories. I found myself and made myself a small kitchen, and I started learning how to make pizzas. And I learned what you asked me right to begin with, perseverance. Because to get the perfect pizza, it takes millions of square pizzas before you're able to make it completely round. So I learned perseverance, and I will make the best pizza in the world.
Can you?
No. I'm working on it. Next 4 years when you don't see me.
But was it a difficult moment when your wife and your family and everybody said, will you stop making pizza? Go back to work. Was it difficult to know now is the time to go back?
Yeah, actually, you know, there was always a toss-up. I was very glad my family didn't tell me, listen, your pizzas are better than your films, stop making films. So I was glad they turned around and said, no, as good as your pizza is, I think your films are better. They were very encouraging, especially my children, my team, some of them are sitting here, and they said, okay, what you're going to do is tell stories. And, you know, I'd become indulgent. I'd started becoming too innovative. I was looking for perfection. And I started failing. I needed to look for excellent. I needed to be unique. But I needed to look at the audience, what they want. And I'd stopped hearing the crowds. I used to go where there are thousands and lakhs of people waving at me, but I wouldn't hear or feel what they wanted to see of me. You know, I was going there and waving, and I'm saying, whatever I make, I'll be innovative. So I did a film about a vertically challenged guy. I did a film about a manic, psychopathic fan. And I'm like, no, people just like to see me giving hope and happiness and love. So let's get back to that.
And as a result, the movies that you came back to make, and there were 3 of them last year, were huge successes. Therefore, that introspection clearly worked. That clearly did the trick.
Yes, mashallah, I think it just helped me realize that whatever you do, you have to do for the people or your consumers or your audiences. And yeah, it also made me realize one very main thing, that don't forget to pray. You have to pray and you have to get back to work.
Sir, I'm going to leave you with one. I'm sorry, I've forgotten. What was your name again? Your name is?
Bond. James Bond.
He's available for the offers. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much, everyone. Khuda Hafiz.
Thank you for this session.
الحضور الكريم، نستكمل باقي الجلسات في هذه القاعة ظهر هذا اليوم. إلى حين ذلك يمكنكم حضور الجلسات المنعقدة بالتوازي في القاعات المخصصة لها. شكرا لكم.
Ladies and gentlemen, we will resume our sessions in this hall this afternoon. In the meantime, you may attend other breakout sessions taking place at the dedicated halls. Thank you.